Hello everybody, God bless you. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Pastor Shanique Beckford, and today I want you to stay tuned. I'm going to share with you 20 techniques or 20 signs that your church is a cult or that your church is actually practicing witchcraft. So I want you to stay tuned. This is going to be very informative, very educational. It's going to be a wonderful video. But before I go any further, I want you guys to go ahead and make sure you like this video, leave a comment more than once, so that way YouTube's algorithm can share the video so that many more persons can be blessed by this video. Make sure you are subscribed and hit the share button, share with a friend. Alright, so let's just go ahead and read the clip and let's come back. Hello everybody, welcome back. I am Pastor Shanique Beckford. So today, as I said earlier, and based on the title of this video, you can see what I'll be sharing with you guys. I'm going to be talking to you about 20 signs or techniques that your pastor uses or your church uses that can help you to identify if you are a part of a cult or if witchcraft is being practiced or used on members or said persons, whoever it is within the church organization. All right, so number one, and these signs, the signs I'm going to share with you guys, they're not necessarily in any set, they're not set in any, what should I say, it's not, I'm just going to throw the signs out there. All right, so number one is isolation. If there is witchcraft within a part, witchcraft being practiced in a particular church, or if the church is actually a cult organization, you're going to experience isolation. Now, isolation is the loss of reality, and this is induced by physical separation from society. So they're going to brainwash you or charm you into believing that you should not associate yourself with persons outside in the world. You should just take yourself into a place of isolation because you are no longer like them or you're no longer a part of them. So if you are being isolated or pushed into a place where you're being isolated from the outside world, then something is definitely wrong. You should not be told that you are so saved or you're so sanctified that you should not sit in a place or come to a place where you can socialize with persons who are not a part of that organization. So once you feel as though you are being told you have to isolate from everyone else who is not a part of that organization or church, then something is definitely wrong. So isolation is a fact, is a key that you have to pay attention to. All right, and a lot of churches actually do that. They'll tell you, once you're a member of this church or cult or whatever organization, they'll tell you you are not allowed, you're not permitted to visit other churches, you're not permitted to go to certain conferences, certain concerts, or you're not permitted to go and socialize with anybody else. So this is definitely something that you have to pay attention to. Number two is you have hypnosis. And once I say hypnosis, I know some persons are saying, oh, this is a bit deep. Hypnosis isn't something that is practiced in modern day church. But I want you to understand that even though it is hypnosis that is being done, it is not necessarily brought across as actual hypnosis. No, this is a state of high suggestibility induced by hypnosis, often thinly disguised as meditation. So there are some churches, they disguise hypnosis as meditation, and then there are some other churches, they use some other terminology for meditation because they don't believe in meditation or they don't believe in using that term meditation or hypnosis. So you have to be able to discern the difference between the words and what is actually being done. And the reason why this hypnosis is being done, I've just researched the whole psychological explanation behind hypnosis, and this is what it says. It says traditional hypnosis is when a hypnotist puts a person into an alternate state that opens them up to a command. So this is what the church does. This is what many pastors and cult leaders or witchcraft operators do. They put you into a state, an alternate state, a state of being hypnotized. And so this opens you up to being vulnerable. It opens you up to take certain levels of command. So once you're in that state, whatever they tell you to do, you're able to do it. And this is why many pastors can, prostitute, can rob, can take money, assets and things from people, or get them to sign certain documents, because they're in a state where they're not thinking from a clear state of mind. So hypnosis is not that thing where you dangle a key in front of somebody. It's not that thing where you stare at a maze and you just become totally blurry and just lost in it. No, that's not hypnosis. Hypnosis is done from a place, or it is done in a state where you don't even necessarily know that it is being done. In the same way as psychologists can sit and get into your mind and find out things that you never knew that you were going through, is the same thing where hypnosis is concerned. So you have to be very careful when it comes to this. All right. Number 3 is love bombing, and I actually found this information online from a psychological site that shares about cult churches, and I found it I found the information very relevant and important. So I just made a few tweaks to it. So the next one I want to share, number 3, is love bombing. What this is, it is a sense of family and belonging contrived through hugging, kissing, and flattery. So what these organizations will do is they will flatter you, they will love on you, hug you, kiss you, make you feel as though you are welcomed, make you feel as though you are loved, make you feel like you are a part of a community. And so you definitely feel that sense of acceptance, because at first, of course, they're going to treat you that way, and once you get in, then that is absolutely where it will begin. So that is love bombing. Do not be fooled by their flattery and their love. Do not be fooled by their acceptance and their hugs and all of that. You have to be very careful. All right. Number four is removal of privacy. So we're getting into deep waters. Number 4 is removal of privacy. Now what this is, it is the loss of ability to evaluate or being entitled to one's own opinion. This is logically achieved by preventing private contemplation. So by removing the sense of privacy, or removal of privacy, they're simply your pastor, your leader, your church or organization, that witchcraft place or cult place is simply trying to say, or simply trying to remove your privacy, where you are not allowed, you're not permitted to have any form of evaluation. You can't evaluate things before you make decisions. You're not permitted to make decisions or to evaluate or think logically on certain things. You are requested, or it is expected of you, that you will just say yes to everything, or you will go along with everything. So the ability where you can contemplate through certain things, it is not allowed. If they say jump, you just have to ask how high. If they say run, you just have to ask how far, and that's just what they require of you. Your yes is required and not your no's. I'm gonna share some more with you. I'm gonna go deep and share some more stuff with you. So after removal of privacy, then we are going to go to sleep deprivation and fatigue. Now this is disorientation and vulnerability created by prolonged mental and physical activity, based on how much work you have to do, where you are not getting or receiving adequate sleep or rest. So due to the excess work that you're being given, both physically and mentally, it pushes you to a place of exhaustion, and you're also not getting as much rest as you actually should get. So if you are a part of an organization and your life is totally consumed by what you're being given to do, that you don't have time for your personal work, you don't have time for your family, and you're being mentally disturbed, you're being mentally distressed, mentally fatigued, where you can't get any form of rest. So even though you are at home, you still can't get rest, because mentally it's almost like your mind is running 1,000 miles. You have to be very mindful of these things. Sometimes it's not just that you are committed to the work you're doing, because the truth is, some of you're very disciplined, you're very hardworking, you're very submissive to leadership, to your organization, but the fact that you're actually working with these people, sometimes you can be used because of your good heart and your goodness. And so sometimes you have to be very mindful and very discerning that you're not just being used or taken an advantage of because you're good at what you do, or you are disciplined to whatever it is that you are doing. All right. right? So that's deprivation and fatigue and loss of sleep. Then we're gonna take it a bit further to meta communication. I don't know if you guys have ever heard the term meta communication before, but this is what it actually is. It is subliminal messages implanted by stressing certain keywords or phrases in long, confusing lectures or conversation. The actual meaning for meta communication is, and I want to share so you guys can understand where I'm going with this one. This one is very important, and I'm sure that a lot of you guys have actually experienced this before, but you don't know what it is. So the definition is auxiliary or convert messages usually conveyed in the form of subtle gestures. So meta communication is usually conveyed in the form of subtle gestures, movements or facial expressions about procedural aspects or dynamics. What I'm simply trying to say is there are certain organizations, they have taught you and indoctrinated you into certain things where you just know what is what without there being any form of verbal, written communication. So just by looking at their faces, you know what is what. Just by a particular gesture of raising the eye or scratching the head or looking at them a certain way, clearing the throat, or just a serious stare piercing into your soul, you know exactly what is what. So for example, you're a part of a church or an organization where someone messes with little children or something along that line, but when the police come or somebody comes to investigate the issue, the moment you see persons begin to give you that stare or that look, you know that you are not supposed to say anything at all. This is what predators and rapers and kidnappers and molesters, this is what they do, meta communication. When you molest or when you molest or you assault a little child, just by the fact that that person, your molester, is going to look you in the eyes, you know that you don't dare say anything or else you're dead. So this is what many churches do, many organizations and cults do. They have meta communication. So by the time you see your pastor give you that look, you know you're not supposed to do this, you're not supposed to do that, you're just not supposed to get involved in certain things. So you have to be very careful of this. And this is definitely it's a manipulation game, it's a mind control game. It puts you in a place where you're always on edge, you're walking around on eggshells, because each time your pastor looks at you or makes a certain gesture, you feel uncomfortable, you feel entrapped in a certain space. A lot of people are going through this and they literally do not know what it is. They just feel as though it has to do with the chain of command or respect or honor. No, honor is not control. If you or anybody you know is experiencing this or you have experienced it, I want you to go ahead and just drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what you think about this. Alright, let's take it further. So the next one is no questions. No questions. No question, it's automatically acceptance. You are required rather to have automatic acceptance of belief accomplished by discouraging questions. If you are a part of a church or an organization, you're not permitted, you're not allowed to ask questions, then something is wrong. There's no way that you can be a part of a church and your pastor, your leader, or whoever it is in that organization is going to tell you that whatever they say is what goes. You are not allowed to ask any form of questions. If you do not understand something, you just have to accept it just the way it is. Then you have to begin to question. The fact that they are telling you that you should not ask any questions, that is something in itself for you to question. So there's some of you can't question, why do we believe in this? Why do we believe in that? You are entitled to ask questions. You are entitled to having a form of understanding about where you are worshiping. In fact, before you join any church or any organization or take a sense of membership or form of membership, you have to ask questions to know what is the culture of this church, what are the beliefs of this church, what are the morals, what are the code of conduct, what are the core values or the core objectives of this church or organization before you become a member. So never feel as though, I never allow any leader, any pastor, any church to make you feel like you should never ask questions. All right. No, the next one is confusing doctrine. Confusing doctrine. Confusing doctrine is it's pretty straightforward. If you are being taught something that does not make sense, you're being taught something that is anti-God, anti the Holy Spirit, or it doesn't make sense, it doesn't come in alignment with the Word of God, then this is something that you have to begin to pray about and ask the Holy Spirit about. Be careful that you're being indoctrinated by a false doctrine, something that totally goes against the inspired written Word of God. So you have to be very careful of this. The next one is rejection of old values. So you are required to have acceptance of a new lifestyle, accelerated by constantly denouncing your former lifestyle, your former values or morals, or what you are accustomed to. So in other words, if you join a certain organization or a certain church, you have to renounce or denounce everything that you were ever taught before. You have to renounce and denounce who you were when you were a part of this church or this ministry. Then something is wrong, because they don't want you to renounce the old values, your own morals, your old work ethics. You're denouncing everything that you once knew, everything that you once taught. So I guess you can make capacity to learn their old false doctrine. So if you are being told to renounce certain things that you grew up in, don't get me wrong, there's certain things that you have to unlearn to learn, because there's some things that we were taught growing up that does not make sense, it's not biblical, it's not scriptural, it has nothing to do with God. So sometimes the more mature you come, or the deeper you come into God, we have to unlearn certain things. But when the things you are being told you have to unlearn does not make sense, goes against your human rights, goes against your rights as a human being to think, to process, to evaluate, to contemplate, to make decisions, then something is definitely wrong, and you are in a cult and not a church. You're being charmed, you're being witchcraft, it's not a church. And the next one is confession. So if you are a part of a church and you are required to make certain confessions, such as destruction of personal egos, increased vulnerability to new teaching, and recruits weakness revealed through sharing innermost secrets, you have to be careful of this. As a pastor, as a leader, I encourage persons to heal on their own terms, heal on their own timing, to get over certain things through counseling and deliverance on their own time. It doesn't matter how much as a pastor I want people to be healed and delivered. There are just certain things you cannot rush. Sometimes healing takes time, so someone can actually be delivered. No, sometimes deliverance, as a matter of fact, is over a period of time. Sometimes healing is over a period of time. So sometimes there are certain things that people go through, and you are not required, you are not always going to heal overnight. If you were molested, raped by your father, you're going through traumatic life experiences, it is not required, or it is not a must that you're going to get up and heal overnight. There's some things you're going to take time to heal, especially where the things of the soul and the heart is concerned. The heart and the soul requires time for healing. You don't just heal overnight. So what they are saying is that when you come to a place of confession, when you come into a place of confession, you're going to share your areas of weakness, you're going to share your innermost secrets, and you have to be careful about this. Sometimes not everything is supposed to be shared. It doesn't matter how much you entrust some people, sometimes there are some things that you just have to work out with God and God alone, or until you have grown to a place where you can trust a pastor, trust a leader, trust a group of people to share certain things that you have done in the past, especially if you were in the wrong or you are shameful of this thing. You have to entrust these persons before you can be open enough to share or reveal or expose certain weaknesses or certain things that you have done in the past. And confessing usually leads to something else. I don't believe that as a Christian you have to confess certain things. You don't need to confess certain things to your pastor. You don't need to confess certain things to your church. There are some organizations, if you have sinned or you have done certain things, you have to go in front of that church and you have to confess what you did. You have to go to your pastor and you have to confess what you did. I do not believe in that. If an individual is a part of a leadership or a part of the clergy and they want to openly say that this is what I have did, I have repented, I seek your forgiveness because I was a leader representing you as a church, then that is up to them. But if you are just a random person within the church, or it doesn't matter what role you play, it is always going to be your decision. If you want to make an actual confession to the church or to the pastor, hey, you confess to God, work out your fears, work out your sin and your own salvation with fear and trembling, with God, not with man. Now, I do believe that confession leads to something else, and the next point I want to share is guilt. After you have confessed, then there is guilt. This only happens in the cult churches, the churches that have nothing to do with God. So this is what they do where guilt is concerned. There are teachings of external salvation reinforced by exaggerating sins or formal lifestyle, and so your obedience to the group is maintained, your obedience and loyalty to the group is maintained by threatening your soul and your life and your forgiveness. So when you confess and you share certain things that you were once a part of or you once used to do, know that they know this information about you. It is held over your head. So there's external salvation where if you do not do what they do, if you don't do what they demand or do what they say, then you are seen as someone who is sinful. You're seen as someone who should not be a part of their group, and if you're not a part of their group, it means that you are condemned. It means that you are so chanting and singing is not something that is necessarily always done visibly. Sometimes these things are done, sometimes it's actually done in plain sight. It is disguised, but you're not able to see it just by the plain eye. Sometimes you recite, you declare certain things, you do certain things, but you don't even realize what you're actually doing. Or sometimes these are chanting rituals and things are done when the churches or the leaders, whoever, want to initiate you into a deeper level of authority or whatever it is, selling your soul, whatever it is. So you just have to be very careful and very mindful of what you're actually getting involved in. Some of these churches, they're not hiding and doing what they're doing. It is actually being done in plain sight. Without the spirit of discernment or spiritual eyes, then you will actually not be able to see what is actually being done. Alright, so another one is change of diet. Disorientation and increased susceptibility to emotional arousal achieved by depriving the nervous system of necessary nutrients. So sometimes when these things, you are being enforced into certain things, you have to adopt to certain things, it feels abnormal. Sometimes these things actually messes with your mental space. It ends up messing with your diet, it ends up messing with your nervous system, and it just affects your diet overall. So sometimes a lot of people, they lose their appetite, they stop eating, they begin to lose weight, and it just begins to affect them overall. So there's more I want to share with you. There's actually more. Leave a comment if you can relate to any of this, by the way. Alright, so then there is controlled approval. Controlled approval is vulnerability and confusion maintained by alternately rewarding and punishing similar actions. You have a dire need for approval because of confusion and vulnerability. If you are being pushed into a place of vulnerability, especially because you have confessed certain things, especially because you feel as though you need to be a part of their group or their organization, you need their approval before you do anything. This is definitely something that can affect your spirituality. It can affect you as an individual. You do not need man's approval for certain things. Of course, when you honor and you respect your leader, you'll seek counseling for some things, and that is fine. But when you have to get approval for every single thing that you do in your life, and if you do not get approval, you are seen as not being submissive, not being obedient, then something is terribly wrong, and you have to seek God on that. All right, the next one is dress. When you're a part of a cult, a part of a church where you're being witchcraft, charm, whatever it is, eventually your dress code is going to change. For many of them, your dress code changes. Sometimes it starts off very subtle. Sometimes it's not bad because they don't do certain things to make it that obvious. So sometimes it doesn't have to affect your dress codes. But then there are some, they're very subtle. For some, it's the simple, you can't wear makeup, you can't process your hair, you can't wear jewelry, you can't wear false hair, and that's one level. And then for some, they start off like that. So first you have to remove the jewelry, the makeup, the false hair. You have to go back to being natural, not being permed or anything like that, to the point where you can't wear certain clothes, to the point where you just have to wear a certain earth tone pullover, thing that makes you look like I don't even know what, until you become like a zombie, a total walking dead. You have to pay attention to these things, guys. Any man that is in Christ, he's a free man. Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. There's no need for control and manipulation. So never feel as though you need anybody to put you in that place. The next one is flaunting of hierarchy. The flaunting of hierarchy. So acceptance of cult authority produced by promising advancement or promotion, power and salvation is very something that is very important. You need to be aware of. In other words, many are deceived because of promised promotion or gaining power from being in a certain position or a certain office. So whenever you find that they are flaunting hierarchy, if you do this, you can come to this level. If you do that, I can promote you into this office. You have to be very careful. So okay, give us all your assets and I'll promote you to this. Kill this man and I'll promote you to this. Listen, there are some things that are happening that people do not even know of. I'm gonna share a particular instance with you guys. Just hold on just a second. Let me just do 3 more and then I'll share it with you guys. All right, the next one is finger pointing. So there's a false sense of righteousness created by pointing out the shortcomings of the outside world and other cults or churches. So what these churches do is they point fingers at everybody else. In other words, they are the only ones who are truly saved. They're the only ones who are really going to heaven. Everybody else is going to hell. Everybody else is sinful. Every other church, the pastors are witchcraft workers. So they victimize themselves and they point out everybody else because they want to build a form of they want to make people feel comfortable that I'm the only one who is truly saved. I'm the only one who is truly going to heaven. This is the right way to pray. This is the right way to do this thing called church. You have to be careful. When you're going to a church where they make every other church seem like they are not of God, then something is wrong. As a pastor, I'm not the only one who is going to heaven. My church is not the only church that can bring you healing and give you help. There are many other churches that are in the region, in the country, that can actually do what I'm doing and even probably do what I'm doing even better. So you have to be careful of this. 2 more. Replacement of relationships. And this is something that is very deep, very serious. So replacement of relationships, what this is, pre-cult families are destroyed by arranging cult marriages and families. So what this does is they pull you to a place of isolation from your previous friends and families. This is why oftentimes you hear that people are moving out of their family house, moving out from their wives, their children, their actual families to join a certain organization, because now you have to renounce everything that you once knew. You're no longer like your family. You're no longer part of your family, so you can no longer associate with them. You have to take yourself away from them because they're the sheep, they're the goat, and you're the sheep, whatever it is that they tell people. So if you're being pulled away from your family, there's nothing like family. I don't care how anointed you are, how prophetic you are, how saved you are, there's nothing like family. Your family always comes first. So if you're a part of a group or a church that is pulling you from your family, then you have to begin to reevaluate everything about being a part of this actual church or being a part of this denomination. All right, the final one I want to share with you guys is financial commitment. When you come into a certain church and you are being, it is